Cole Wright here on Sports Talk Chicago. Cole, let's talk Bears now. How do you describe what you've seen this season from this team?
Well, I think that it almost said it all, didn't it? I mean, it's still to me, it's disheartening, it's frustrating that Chicago, Illinois, United States of America, the third largest media market in the United States, yet they consistently spin their tires when it comes to putting together a quality football team. And I don't know where it starts at. A lot of times when you see things that aren't on the right track, it's organizational. We've heard some of those rumblings throughout the city. Do they need an entire revamp? We've seen the separation between Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, and apparently at one point they were a total package deal. And it's almost like they're junior high kids. They're out egging someone's house or rolling toilet paper on them, and it's like, hey, come on out, we got caught, they got us. But and then now Ryan Pace is like, hold on a second. I was just out for a nightly stroll. I wasn't with these guys. It's like, and that's it. It all boils down to CYA. You got to cover yourself. And for Ryan Pace, I'm sure he enjoys his position, and knowing what he knows and seeing the product out there on the field, Matt Nagy not long for that position. So, when it comes to the product that we've seen so far, it's all about development. And what we've seen out of Justin Fields, I don't think the Bears have done everything within their best effort to develop Justin Fields as the starting quarterback. And I feel like that could have been a byproduct of the Bears not having a quality quarterback for the last 50 years. No disrespect to Jim McMahon or Mitch Trubisky, the only two Pro Bowlers since 1970 in the modern era. But when you're Chicago, Illinois, when you're the Chicago Bears, and everyone always says, I say it myself, like when you talk about the Bears, they're one of the original teams. They have this rich story tradition, but do they? Because the Bears haven't won a whole bunch over the last 25 years. And when it comes to recency bias, that's what you have to look at. I mean, you're pretty much right now chained to the fact if you don't have 5 straight winning seasons, you're not considered a winning team. And, I almost feel like right now we're to the point when the Bears do have a winning season, that's the blip on the radar, as opposed to them not having a winning season. And that's not what I don't want to continue to speak like this. I mean, this is the Chicago Bears. This is the same team that I rolled around with when I was a kid with a headband that said Sweetness. I had a Sweetness one. I had a Roselle one. Obviously, Jim McMahon and Walter Payton, they wore those Pete Rozelle headbands just to kind of, like shove it in his face. But that's what I want to go back to. I want to go back to 1986 when I was, a child, obviously, and you had, that youthful zest when it came to cheering for your team. But the Bears were a different monster back then. No pun intended when it comes to the monsters of the Midway, but they were a different kind of team. They were a different organization. And I feel like they can get back to that. But it all starts at the top. Whether it's Louis Riddick as the new GM, whether it's Daniel Jeremiah, either one of those guys, from my time being around them and from what they know of the game, not to discredit Ryan Pace, but you get X amount of years to accomplish something, and he has not accomplished what a lot of people have set out for him. And sometimes you just have to clean house. And I'm not suggesting that that's exactly what gets done right now, but from what we've seen so far this season, there needs to be a change. And whether it's a guy like Louis Riddick or a guy like Daniel Jeremiah, I mean, they could make some moves and they could have the Bears, back as one of those teams that looks like they're from a top 5 media market in the United States.
What makes those two specifically good candidates?
Well, I mean, Louis Riddick has been a candidate now for, it seems like a few years. Every time a job opens up, it's like, well, Louis Riddick, he's going to go. And but one thing that I can't say this was my barometer, but just the other day, I saw some articles and I went and clicked on it and, and listened to it. And Stephen A. Smith was saying, like, y'all better join Louis Riddick while he's around here because he ain't going to be here for too much longer. Like, that's kind of his way of saying, okay, there's going to be some GM jobs that are open. Louis Riddick, clearly qualified. I think that it would benefit a team if he were in their front office, maybe not in a general manager capacity even, maybe if it was as a consultant. But I feel like, his football acumen, his knowledge of the game, it is next level. And he does know how to do those, those front office comings and goings. And so that wouldn't be a problem for him. Daniel Jeremiah, I mean, he's a scout at heart, former quarterback at Appalachian State. I mean, just sitting and listening to him break film down and everything he knows when it comes to scouting the right players, I feel like when your GM is your best scout in the building, I think you'll be all right. And if that's the case for any, because I know that there were talks when the Jets had that open GM position, Daniel Jeremiah to go be the GM of the New York Jets. I don't think he wanted that job. I mean, he's a California guy. Why would you want to go live in New York City and then have to be the GM for the lesser of the two teams? Now, both of them right now, they're both not very good. But if you had to pick one, with that lineage, I don't think people are saying, okay, well, yeah, the Jets, they won with Joe Namath. Like, come on, stop. We're not talking about stuff when color TV just came to pass. We're talking about a team that's won recently. And I think if you were going to be a GM of the two New York teams, you'd rather it be the New York Giants. So when all that speculation was wrapped around Daniel Jeremiah with the Jets, I think the job that he, in his heart of hearts, wants is the Chargers GM job. Maybe that opens up sometime soon. Maybe it doesn't, because the Chargers are, like I always say, the Chargers are nothing but the West Coast Miami Dolphins. They're not good. They haven't been good. They won't be good anytime soon. There's just so much more to do. They're the second fiddle in Los Angeles. I mean, it seems like they rent SoFi Stadium from the Los Angeles Rams. So I feel like if the right opportunity presented itself for either Lewis or DJ, then I think that they could help a team. They could help them win some games. And I would love if Daniel Jeremiah got hired as the Bears GM, because I worked with the guy for 6 years. I know him. I think that would have maybe a little inside track when it came to some of that Bears knowledge. But what do I know? Maybe he'd get the job and he'd clam up and be like, I'm going to give you just as much as I give everybody else, as much as I give Dan Roan, as much as I give this guy or that guy. So that's where I'm at when it comes to that general manager search. And the two of those guys, they look to be two pretty big candidates.